So hopefully now you have come up with 25 images and you've placed them in your grid and everything should fit just right. You might find that some of your images have like white lines around them, and that means that maybe you didn't get them just in place so they totally match. Remember, this is 10 inches across. If every photo is exactly 2 inches, then there shouldn't be any little gaps. If you have to move an image at all, you can use the arrow keys, but first you have to select it. These are all the layers, and remember each layer is a photo. So layer 20 is that little photo of eggs. If we need to adjust something, let's say I want to move this middle photo a tiny bit, we can right-click it and see it's layer number 13. That's selected. Now I can just use my arrow keys and I can move that right into place. I actually needed to move it. I had a little white line there, and I just needed to see that line right here. I just needed to move it over a tiny bit, and I fill that in, but I didn't take too much from this side, so there's no line on that side. So you might have to, right-click a few, adjust to get rid of that white line, and make sure every photo fits seamlessly right to the next one. All right, we want to be nice and precise with this. Make sure you save your work as you go along. This is a lot of work. You don't want to redo it. Okay, so the point of this project is to understand layers, and hopefully you're seeing how everything here is a layer. We started with the background layer, which you can't see anymore because it's covered by all these pictures. And as we added photos, they became layers. Now, what we want to do with this image is come up with some kind of a pattern using hue and saturation. Saturation is how deep, how much color is there, and the hue is kind of what blend of color we're using. So we have adjustment layers here, and these are all the image layers. So if you just put your cursor over everything, you see exactly what they do. These are brightness and contrast, levels, curves, we'll talk more about that, exposure, vibrance, but we're going to work with hue and saturation. So whenever you, let me just Control Z here a second, we're going to select a layer, and I'll pick the first layer. Remember, that's that little piece of giraffe skin. And we've selected it. We'll go to Adjustments. We're going to just click Hue Saturation. And you'll see that just applied this hue saturation layer right here. Now we can change the hue. We can go to a kind of a very weird bluish green to very warm or beyond warm, purplish. And we can also change the saturation. We can make this fully saturated or completely desaturated. I'm going to, for kicks, I'm going to change the, I'm going to work with saturation, I think, on this one. And I'm going to start this with 0. And as I go across this way, I'm going to let my images get more and more saturated. And I'm also going to adjust the hue so that they get a little more of a kind of a bluish angle here. If I need to readjust this, I can double click it and it'll take me back. Well, I guess not. So we'll bring this back to 0 right here. So I'm now going to select this layer. This is layer 3. Wait, there's one more thing I want to do. Let's go back to this layer. Now, as I go along with my layers, as I apply a layer, I want it to only apply to the piece underneath. So let me give you an example with layer 2. I'll select layer 2, all right, and go to my adjustments. I'm going to hit hue saturation. But I also want to click this little button here, because right now this layer will apply to everything under it, including layer number 1. So watch a second as I make a change on this one. Well, because the bottom one is desaturated, you won't see a change, but it would actually affect the one under it. So we want to make sure we click this button with each layer. Now, this layer right here, this hue saturation, will only apply to layer 2. not to layer 1 as well. So I'm going to desaturate it, but I'm going to give it a little bit of color. All right. And I'm going to start to shift this over a tiny bit. Okay. Layer 3, right here. I'm going to do something similar. I'll select it. I'll put a hue saturation layer on it. And I'm going to click this little button. I'm going to also desaturate it, but add a little bit of color back. And I'm going to shift this to start to warm it up to get a little more of the blues in there, a little purple and blues. As I come down to this one, that's layer 8. My layers are a little out of whack here. It's going to be a little messy, but I can figure that out. I am going to add another hue saturation layer. I'm going to make sure I click that button. And now I'm going to, again, desaturate it, but I'm going to bring it up a little bit more than the others. I'm still going to go over in this direction. And I'm going to see what I can do. Okay, it's going to be a very big experiment as I go along. I don't want to add a lot of color yet, because when I get here, I want to be really colorful. All right, so I was at -65 and -8, and I'm going to come down here to layer number 4, which is that picture. Let me just double check. Yep, there it is. Same thing. We're just going to add a hue saturation layer. Whoops, I just needed to click it. My bad. I'll click that button, so it's only going to apply to 4. And same thing, I'll start to desaturate it. This photo is a little different, so I may not desaturate it quite as much. And I'm going to do something like this. Now you can do this with hue saturation. The other thing you could do to make this kind of an interesting thing is you could go with vibrance. And let me show you what a vibrance layer would do. Now if I want to get rid of this hue saturation layer, I can just drag it to the trash. And it will simply delete that layer mask. So let's get rid of a couple. All right, I'm going to drag that to the trash. I'm going to drag actually all of my hue saturation layers into the trash so that I can show you what this looks like with just a vibrance layer. We'll even drag this one to the trash. And if I wanted to do, we'll even get rid of this one up here. So if I wanted to do a vibrance layer, again, this is number 1, I can just go to adjustments and I'll find vibrance. Just click it. Make sure I hit the button so it only applies to the layer under it. And let's this time play with desaturating it. I'll start with a fully desaturated one. When I get to layer 2, I will add another one. It'll be pinned to it. Let's make sure I know which layer I'm talking about. Whoops, layer 2 is that little flower. And again, I'm gonna bring this way down, but I'll start to give it a little color. I won't do too much. I won't bring it like quite all the way down. I'll bring it up a little bit. Start to play around with the vibrance a little bit. All right, make sure you hit that little button. And I'm just gonna keep doing this, all right? I'm just gonna keep going, and I kind of, now that I'm doing it, I sort of like the vibrant saturation a little more. Kind of makes an interesting pattern, you know? I'm working on this photo, remember? Right over here, and I'm just going to go up and just start to play around. So you'll see that, you know, probably would be easier if I move some of my layers, and I can just go ahead and I can move layer 8 so that actually now this photo now falls more in order with the others. So I think I would do that too, so that I think it'll help you stay more organized. Remember, make sure that you're hitting this button, all right? So it pins what you're doing to just that layer. Otherwise, if you don't hit that button, it's going to affect everything underneath it. So I'm right here with this little flower here. I want to give it a little more, a little less saturation than the ones before it. Maybe start to bring the vibrance up, so that when I get it all the way down here to layer 25, then when I get my vibrance layer on 25, make sure you hit that button just to clip it to the one layer right underneath it. When I get here, I want to like really make this powerful, okay? Nice and big, super saturated, right on layer 25. Okay, so that's the pattern I'm going for. You can pick the direction you go and the pattern you go. Anything works, all right? I just want you to play around with these. Remember, make sure that you're using this button so that you pin these layers to, you pin these adjustment layers to the image right underneath. Otherwise, you're going to find that it's affecting everything all at once. All right, once you're all done with that, then I'll give you some instructions for saving and turning that in. Hope this works for you. Keep me posted with questions and enjoy learning Photoshop.